We are...
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Daniel Holden, and welcome to this edition of the Wimbledon Community Forum. I'll start with welcomes and introductions. You may recognise I'm not James Holmes. Holmes sends his apologies. He has another clash of committee meetings, so he sends his apologies and couldn't be here tonight. I've also received apologies from Councillor Nigel Benbow from Abbey Ward. And for the benefit of those watching on Zoom or YouTube, we do have a few other councillors in the room. Let's introduce them, and if you just say hello, wave at the camera. We have Councillor David Williams for Hillside. Right there. We have Councillor Anthony Fairclough for Dondonald. And we have Councillor Simon McGrath also from Dondonald.
Hi.
Hi there. I think that's all the other councillors, and we have Chris Withington from the council, who's taking the proceedings tonight. So that's a welcome to everyone. The agenda tonight is quite light. We'll have an introduction from Suzanne at Plan Wimbledon and what's happening on that. We'll have a section about your Merton in Council survey that the council is currently doing. There'll be an open forum section to talk about the boundary commission's proposals for Wimbledon and any other matters that may come up, and then a final bit about next meeting. So we'll open up with an update from Suzanne Grocott on Plan Wimbledon. And we'll
okay, thank you, Chris. So you're going to put up our presentation. Okay, so thank you, everybody. So I'm Suzanne Grocott. I'm the chair of the of Plan Wimbledon. Now, for those people who are members of Plan Wimbledon, and we had a general meeting last night, I'm going to apologise. You are going to see the same presentation. But for those who weren't there last night, this is just going to be an update on recap of who we are and about the consultation that Future Merton recently had on the on Plan Wimbledon. So Chris, whether we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we've just got the agenda where it is going to be saying the about us, the consultation process, and then really next steps. Okay, next slide. So yeah, the Plan Wimbledon mission, simple and straightforward. So it's to shape a better, more sustainable Wimbledon to enhance the lives of future generations of residents, businesses, workers and visitors. And we defined 3 core values which underpin our mission. And you can see those running underneath the logo. So it's sustainability, so recognising the urgency of global climate change and the need to get to net zero carbon emissions. Prosperity, knowing that a flourishing place is a happier place, as well as acknowledging that Wimbledon must contribute to a growing population in London, both in terms of housing and job prospects. And then community, which is working together in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, bringing together the different stakeholders and interest groups to find common ground and win-wins. And we believe that neighbourhood planning is the way to achieve this mission. So next slide, please. So looking at the map, the Plan Wimbledon area is shaded in orange. And to put this in context, the blue line is the parliamentary boundary and red is the Merton borough boundary. And all the red dots that you can see show the spread of Plan Wimbledon membership. And many of the dots that are outside the area represent members that work in or regularly visit Wimbledon and are keen to participate in the neighbourhood planning process. So next slide, please. So neighbourhood planning was introduced as part of the Localism Act in 2011. And the right to create a neighbourhood forum has been taken up by communities in their thousands. Whilst it does take a neighbourhood forum many years bringing a neighbourhood plan to referendum, over 1,000 neighbourhood plans have been adopted since the start of the legislation. So it must be emphasised, though, that a neighbourhood plan does not replace the local plan, but it can complement it. And the neighbourhood plan can't introduce policies that run contrary to the strategic aims of the local plan. I mean, it can't be anti-growth. But the important point to note on this slide is that Plan Wimbledon is a non-partisan organisation, and that until designation receives no public funding, and that the steering committee are committed to delivering a better future for Wimbledon. And because of that, they willingly give their time to this project. So the next slide, please. So the Future Merton consultation on Plan Wimbledon's application ended on the 24th of May. And hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to review the results on the Future Merton website. And if not, please do go and have a look at that. And just to say, we really do appreciate the time that everybody took to take part in the consultation, you know, to speak to friends and families about Plan Wimbledon, those who asked questions, commented on Nextdoor, published articles, posted on Facebook, and liked and retweeted posts. And whilst the consultation that Future Merton conducted was an opportunity for Plan Wimbledon to educate the public about neighbourhood planning, and increase its membership and encourage people to submit their responses, ultimately it was a consultation, not a vote. And designation of a neighbourhood forum is ultimately a political decision by the council. So the next few slides are going to discuss the results of the consultation, and also to highlight some of the areas where Future Merton did raise concerns on the representations that were made. And so the process that we've been going through over the last couple of weeks has been going to and fro between Future Merton and ourselves, just responding to questions and comments that they raised to try and provide more evidence to them. So the Cabinet is meeting on the 22nd of June, and the final decision then will be made at Council on the 7th of July. So I don't know whether we can have a look at the next slide. So this is one of the cartoons that we had. Hopefully, you know, well, hopefully everybody kind of did see some mention of Plan Wimbledon, and took the opportunity to go into the consultation. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is showing the kind of like the results. So the first question was whether people supported Plan Wimbledon's proposed neighbourhood area boundary. So you can see that over 1,300 responses were submitted for that, and almost 90% said yes, that they were happy with that. Next slide, please. And then was whether you support Plan Wimbledon's application to become a neighbourhood forum. And again, it was over 1,300 responses. And again, almost 90% said yes, they did. And then the next slide. Then there was a question about what relationship to the neighbourhood plan that people had. And in this one, whether you can see, there was 106 people who skipped this question. So these are people who did give an answer to the first two main questions, but didn't really say on what relationship they had, why they were answering the questions. But for the people who did, you can see that it is predominantly that it was residents who live in the area, and then a smaller area for people who work, and then there were other. Okay, next slide. So whilst on the face of it, you know, very, very positive, we were very happy with the number of responses. You know, I mean, you have a look at some of the, you know, especially like the characterization study that I think is going to be also looked at the Cabinet. You know, for that consultation, there were about 400 responses. So the fact that we got 1,300 shows that we did capture people's imagination enough to actually to respond to this consultation. But as I was saying, we have had discussions with Future Merton, and these are some of the key issues. And an overriding one is like the size of the area. And then there were particular areas that were raised, either because of responses or consultation representations that were made, or for, say for Plough Lane Retail Park and Weir Road Industrial Site, there was just silence. So it was just that nobody, none of the businesses responded from that area. So, the main, the main concern is really about business representation. So say for Wimbledon Town Centre, there are about 15,000 employees that work within Wimbledon Town Centre. And there was concern about how they and all the landowners and business owners, both in the bid area and in these industrial and commercial sites, would actually be able to have their voice heard when they're not able to vote in the final referendum. And hopefully we have highlighted that the Constitution is flexible enough, to provide that level of representation, and that before the plan, which is many years down the line, would get to a referendum, that has to go through the same rigors as the local plan, and there is pre-referendum consultation that all business employees can go into. So just the next slide, which is like very blank, because we've been through this process and we don't know. We're still waiting on the final report, and we really have no idea what conclusions Future Merton are going to draw, and what recommendation will be made to the Cabinet. So apologies for everybody who's been like sitting waiting to get the final punchline. I'm afraid there isn't really one at the moment, but we are waiting every day for that to come out. The Cabinet meeting is next Tuesday, so it has to be imminent. But thank you very much, and hopefully it's been of some help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. That's a good run through and some positive results. Don't know why Cabinet hasn't received the final recommendation yet, because it's less than a week away to the meeting. So we'll have to just chase up and try and find out where that is. So does anybody have any questions for Suzanne about this report? Do we have any questions on the YouTube version or through email? No? Okay, well, I'll take that as a no. Well, thank you, Suzanne.
All right, thank you.
We wait with breath what happens next.
No, okay, thank you.
To all the councillors at the full council in July, I'm hoping that I'm of the view that it's a good idea and should go ahead.
Okay.
Just have to wait and see what the Cabinet thinks next week.
No, okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on then to the Your Merton survey consultation exercise the council is doing, and I'll ask Chris to explain all about that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just talk briefly about Your Merton, and encourage everyone to participate where possible, and also spread the word. Just going to outline what it is, what the objectives are, what we're doing to engage people, and talk specifically about our online platform, and then as a final plea for. So the idea is to engage with as many people as possible. We're trying to reach those who live, work and study in the borough, and we're trying to deliver for as many channels as possible to get as views from as many different people as possible. Obviously, there's an additional challenge in the COVID environment to be able to do that. We can't put people in rooms and do things with post-it notes, which is my instinctive go-to with years of training. So we've had to adapt and do things a little bit differently. But what we're really trying to get at is an understanding of what our resident community priorities are and what impact COVID has had on those. So over the years, we've asked lots of questions in lots of consultations. I hear often, sometimes too many consultations. But what we know is that the pandemic's had an impact on huge amounts of our lives and how we do things. Everything from the high streets, the transport, our parks, our health, obviously. So we need to sense check what we already know and see what has changed and what we need to do in the future. So we want to get to all parts of the community, and that's always a challenge. We want to make sure we're getting to obviously residents, other community groups, businesses, people who work in the borough, and those parts of the community that we don't often hear from. The idea is to get a set of insights that we can use to build a set of priorities and ambitions for the future. And we're looking both at fairly short term, what do we need to do in the next 12 months to help recover from COVID, and much longer term, what will happen over the next decade. So the idea is to generate a plan for the borough. So we're working to try and coincide with our normal business plan setting process, our corporate plan. We should normally start that process in the autumn with a view to it being tied to the budget that's signed off in March. So these will be actions from April 2022. The key themes in the engagement we're doing starts with places. What are the parts of the borough that people love and respond to? What's important to them? What needs improvement? And how do they need it? Also their daily lives. What impacts quality of life in the borough and in your local area? What's your life like? What influences that? Then that critical element, the new bit about the impact of the pandemic. How has it impacted on your lives? What's going to be the ongoing impact on that? What's changed? What's changed in terms of how you use our services and other local services as well? And then finally, the ambitions for the future. What would you like your area to look like in a decade? So we've got three main strands. We've already conducted a telephone survey. Normally that would be a face-to-face survey, but obviously we couldn't do that with COVID restrictions. So we've done that over the telephone. That is a sampled approach, so it's representative of the demographics of the borough overall. What's open at the moment is the Your Merton website, which we launched in May and is running until July. It's supposed to be interactive, and I'll go into a bit more detail about that. But it's quite different from the normal surveys we do. It's not a lot of scale point questions. Do you agree or disagree? Are you satisfied or not? There's a lot of open questions. Tell us about. Give us your life experience. Give us your views and how you feel about the area. So it's quite a different tone from how we normally do things. And then the other bit in the middle there, we're just starting that process now. We're working with community groups across the borough to identify parts of the community that we often don't engage as well with. So older people, people from ethnic minorities, disabled people, younger people, to do some specific group work with them. So we're working with groups that are known and have that audience to hand to support them to have those kind of facilitated conversations on those same themes. So we'll draw those three strands together, working with an organisation called Traverse, who will do that analysis for us later in the summer. So the Your Merton website, if you haven't already been on, please do go and have a look. You can spend as much or as little time as you really want to, from pinning dots on a map, which is enormous fun if you want to go and highlight the parks or other services or areas that are important to you locally, through telling us about the impact COVID's had and then the ambitions for the future. The more people we have filling this in, even if it's only one or two questions rather than the whole lot, the more, the bigger the data source we have, the richer the data we'll have, and the more we can make of that. So in terms of timing, we're in that bit between May and July at the moment, where the digital platform's opening, the group work is beginning. we'll start to get some emerging themes. We've seen some already, which have been really interesting. We'll go into much more analysis over July and August, with a view to reporting that in September and October, and coming up with a final action plan and implementation plan. So if you haven't already, please visit the Your Merton website. If you have already, please feel free to go back and post some more stuff. That's great. It's always welcome. You're not limited. It's not a one member, one vote situation. If you want to add more tags on the map, great, please do so. So you can happily spend an hour reading other people's comments if you are so inclined. I do anyway, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff on there. People with some very interesting views. It's worth having. We'd also ask if you can share this with your friends, family, local networks. If you're involved in residents groups, please get the word out. You've probably been badgered by me and other colleagues already. We are starting to do some outdoor advertising displays this week, so you may see some posters up and about around the borough. Also encouraging people to take part. We can certainly help if you want to circulate information in things like newsletters, provide images and copy. So if that's the case, please drop me an address. Perhaps take any questions, but
yeah, thank you, Chris. That's a very good run through of what's going on. I think it's a very worthwhile exercise, so I'd encourage everybody to get involved. But does anybody have any questions for Chris at this time? Either put it in the chat, raise your hand, or somehow alert us on the YouTube channel.
I must say, just to say, I did actually get a phone call. So whether I was one of the people that was already in your survey.
Great. That's good.
Yeah, because I must say at the time I wasn't quite sure. Well, if it is, I'll give some feedback that it wasn't made actually clear what the reason the questions were being asked. Because I do know there is like usually an annual survey, and I wasn't just sure it was for that. So I suppose the question is, I mean, is this kind of replacing the annual survey that is normally done, or is that something separate?
Yes, it is that. So yeah, we went biennial a couple of years ago, so we do every other year. So 2019, right. So this is 2021.
No, okay.
So we asked a lot of the same tracking questions around local area and satisfaction with the council services. So we'll have all of that data. But we also put some bespoke questions in specifically around your Merton agenda.
No, okay. Right.
So it's a bit of both.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Take it we've had no emails come in of any questions.
I'll just have a look. Nope. YouTube. No, nothing, Mo.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll move on then. I'd like to encourage everybody to have a go yourself at filling in the survey. It's on my to-do list this weekend to have a play with the map and put some ideas down. So if everybody else could do the same, that would be very helpful. Okay, thank you for that. So let's go on to the open forum session. And Chris, do you mind loading up anything about the boundary review for the parliamentary boundary review?
Yeah, there's nothing to upload. I'll just find my notes. Yes, so the Boundary Commission for England is doing a review. It's called the 2023 review because that's when the changes would come into place. And this is for the parliamentary constituency boundaries. It doesn't affect the borough or Merton as in total, or the wards within it. We've already been through the ward review, so we have new wards for next year. You can have a look at the review and comment on their website, which is bcereviews.org.uk, and you can put in a postcode or a constituency and have a look. There are a few changes in the two Merton constituencies. So for Wimbledon, which obviously covers this area, there are some changes. Cannon Hill ward will migrate from Wimbledon to Mitcham and Morden. And in return, the proposal is that two wards that are currently Kingston, St James's and Old Morden, will become part of the Wimbledon constituency. So they'll still be part of Kingston Borough, Royal Borough, I think they are. but in terms of parliamentary constituencies, they'll come under Wimbledon. So the consultation is open to the 2nd of August. I think this is the first one of about 3 rounds of consultation that we're doing over the next couple of years. But on this one, you can comment on both what the boundaries are and even what they call the constituencies. Don't imagine calling it massively controversial. It's been called that for some time, so that's the least of it. But if you're in Cannon Hill, you may feel particularly strong.
Yeah, so I imagine Cannon Hill is feeling a bit in a tricky situation, actually. They've been Wimbledon forever and a day, and now they've been moved to M&M. So we'll have to watch this space how it all pans out. But I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. It's not by us at all, it's the Boundary Commission, but if there's anything that you want to ask them, we can always send on. Suzanne, yeah?
So I was just going to ask, so why is this all go through it again? I mean, I thought the Boundary Commission had already looked at all the boundaries.
So the last review had 2 objectives. One was to equalise the population groups in all of the constituencies, but it also had an objective to reduce the number of constituencies from 600. This one doesn't have that second objective.
Oh, okay.
So it's about equalising the population. So the last one I think was a bit more controversial because it was because of the reduction in constituencies. You were getting quite a big skew, particularly in London, on things being moved around. Whereas this time around, there'll actually be an increase in the number of MPs. Wales is Scotland.
So sorry, can I have a follow-up question? So I mean, besides something going into Cannon Hill going into Mitcham and Morden, is anything going to be coming out of Mitcham and Morden?
Yes, Long Thornton, I think it is, one of the wards up in the north east is going to move to Croydon.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, yeah. Because I mean, understood. I mean, based on the, the borough ward boundaries. I mean, Mitcham and Morden already had more people than than Wimbledon anyway.
Yeah, they've sort of done an analysis of the electoral population, which is different from the actual population. It depends on the age population. So they've got that on the website. What they think that'll be. It's based on projections.
No, okay. All right. So what was the email again? BCE.
It is bcereviews.org.uk.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
All right. Lovely. Thank you.
Anyway, we'll see what happens with that. Who knows? These things have a habit of changing, as we found in the council ones. So yeah, worth everybody having a go at that, feeding into the consultation if you feel strongly or not. It's worth doing. Okay, so we'll move on from that then, assuming there's no more questions. We had an item from the last meeting that Chris has an answer on. So could you go through that, Chris, please?
Yeah. So the last meeting, someone asked about Hayden Park North and traffic management because there'd been a proposal for a low traffic neighbourhood and wanted to see what was happening next. So I asked Highways colleagues what the situation was there. Their response was that they had received funding via the bidding process to introduce the low traffic neighbourhood. But following the informal consultation process, the majority of responses and residents had rejected that scheme. They don't have any further plans for the area at the moment, and additionally, they don't have any access to additional funding at the moment. So there are no plans at the moment. Their recommendation is that if residents in that part would still like to see some traffic management changes, that they still campaign to do that, and probably a great idea to liaise with councillors about trying to raise that profile.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that one sort of collapsed, that scheme. I do know Traffic and Highways thought it would go ahead, but people said no. And then there was one about Dondonald Park and bins.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, it's Regina here. Yes, thank you for giving me the chance to talk about that. Yes, because one effect of lockdown has been that I've been walking through Dondonald Recreation Ground every morning this last year, and I have noticed that the bins are really overflowing, and of course the foxes come and really, pull the stuff out of it as well. And what I really found very disheartening is, especially outside the playground and in the playground, there's lots of stuff around every morning. Today was the first morning actually when there wasn't. There was only one area where there was lots of stuff. So I understand that originally the bins had lids, but they were taken away, whether they broke or whether they were taken away because it's easier to empty them, I don't know. But it just seems that there needs to be something done about it. I'm not quite sure how that can be done, but having 2 overflowing bins just outside the gate to go into the playground, I think that just really asks for problems, because I mean, with all the rubbish there, it will attract other vermin. And for the children to have to go through this and see that, it's a health hazard as well. And so also in the rest of the recreation ground, very often there's always stuff being either overflowing or the foxes have been at it during the night. So it's a shame that we are in this situation, and I feel something really ought to be done about it. I mean, we've been contacting the local councillors, and Anthony, I think, has been talking to the council and to the company involved. But either the bins have to be changed, or ideally people will take home the rubbish, but that's probably not going to happen. And there has been an increase since we've got a new McDonald's in the town as well, because people get their takeaway and have it in the park, and the rubbish has to go somewhere.
Okay, well, thank you for raising that. Chris, you said you contacted the relevant department at the council to provide a response.
Yes, I talked to Green Spaces colleagues. Their response was that there's been an increase in usage in the park in line with the obviously improvement in the weather. So as a result, they've increased the frequency of collection, and also our internal contract management team have been going more often to check on that as well. The bins are supposed to have lids, so they're going to raise that with ID Verdi to get those replaced if they have gone missing. And I think Gina as well asked about the coffee stand that's in there. There is a specific bin for the stand, but of course they can use any park. That's absolutely fine. But if bins are full, obviously we ask residents to take the rubbish home with them. But yeah, there's obviously been an increase, and there seems to be a time lag in catching up with that. So colleagues are being made aware of that, and they're going to be checking it quite frequently.
That's it. I don't know whether I can ask. I mean, because obviously I live around there as well. Noticing that, I mean, there's actually just fewer bins than there used to be. Especially like at Dondonald Tram. I mean, there used to be like bins on both sides, and now there's no bins whatsoever. There used to be one kind of as you went on the other side down the path then to Kingswood, and that's gone.
Oh, they've moved that. It used to be sort of just on inside the path, but they've moved it then to just being outside on the pavement.
Yeah, I understand, because there's just always so many bottles, and I understand that if you have recycling bins that often it's not recycling that goes in them, but I mean, equally the fact that you just have no bins means that you can't encourage the people who would actually recycle. Yeah,
there's a trial going on in central Wimbledon, the town centre at the moment, with the new recycling bins. So hopefully that works well. It's sort of new branding, it's a bit clearer. So if that trial is successful, then that's something I'm looking to roll out across the country.
Well, yes, I think the problem with the lids, that would be good if something would be done about that, because one of the major things is, that foxes get at the stuff in the night. And so you've got somebody putting a bag of vegetable peelings in the bin that's been on the path for 2 days now. So they shouldn't be doing that, but that's what happens. Yeah. Thank you very much for...
I suppose if some of the feedback back to Green Spaces would be a combination of enforcement, both the contractor and all the contractors, and also some public enforcement and more frequency of emptying. So it's a combination of things there.
Or a lot more bins, and then, you know, I guess there'd be more opportunity to well, fill them all up. They don't have to empty them quite so much if there's more.
Okay, well, that's one for green spaces. They've sometimes said in the past that it can be counterintuitive, where you have more bins, you actually get more fly tipping and more dodgy waste all over the place. Sometimes if you have a fewer better bins, it can be easier to manage. So the theory goes. So anyway, we've made a note of that, and that'll be fed back again for public space, green space team to give us any further feedback next time round. Okay, so patient who got waiting, got David Hall, who would like to raise something of interest. So over to David.
Thanks, Councillor. For those of people who don't know me, my name is David Hall, and I'm been the chair of trustees at Wimbledon Community Association since 2012, when the old community centre in St George's Road got closed. We run by a small group of trustees, and we've got a couple of part-time staff. We've had a website called Wimblecom, which we launched in 2016, which is basically promoting community spaces across the borough. We've had a little bit of a relaunch of it recently. And we're now inviting more community groups onto that. The Wimbledon Community Association is actually celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. So some of you may know that before the community centre was set up, it actually dates back to Civil Black's Day, just after the war was set up. And we've got some plans for celebrating that 75th, all good news stuff. We've been doing a bit of research into the history of the Wimbledon Community Association. I've got lots of old files here I've been digging through. And we're going to be telling some stories, positive stories about the past and the present. Obviously now we're operating across the whole of Merton, if you've visited our site. So I would really just to look out for what we've got on the site, and we're going to be putting stuff on social media. And we welcome contributions as well. So we're going to be telling some stories, and we welcome contributions from across the borough, but particularly Wimbledon, and given the history of the Wimbledon Community Association. Don't want to say any more than that at the moment, apart from the fact we are always looking out for new trustees and volunteers as well, if anybody's ever interested in getting involved, because I've been doing this for 9 years now. Anyway, any questions? Happy to answer that. Perhaps I can do a longer slot and another meeting, Chris, if you're interested.
Okay, thank you for that, David. I assume any plans that you have, you can share with Chris, so we can put it on the council communications and to all the ward councillors. And if there's anything in specific wards that you know of, please do contact the ward councillors directly. So do you have any questions for David Hall about the Wimbledon Community Association or any of their plans? Yeah, Joanna? Yeah,
I mean, do you have any sort of events planned, or what sort of events have you planned, kind of just, you know, for the year, or just at a particular time?
Right. Thanks, Regina. Well, yes, that's a bit different. Event planning at the moment isn't the easiest thing in the world, is it?
I know.
We, like everybody else, we've been conducting all our meetings via Zoom ever since lockdown started, and we've dedicated sections to do with COVID, like so many other people. We might at some point have a big event to celebrate it, and hopefully with all the stories that we're going to be putting together, put together some sort of small presentation to do with all that. We haven't confirmed that yet. It will require budget. We're obviously a very small charity, and so we'll need to think very carefully about that, but that's a possibility. So yeah, watch this space really. Otherwise it's all going to be via the website and through virtual sessions like this.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, David. Does anybody else have any questions to ask about the Wimbledon Community Association? No. Okay, so we'll just pivot back to the previous question on public bins, because Anthony Fairclough would like to mention something specific about Dondonald Rec. So over to you, Anthony.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I just wanted to add to the points about Dondonald Rec and the bins. Since a number of complaints, including Regina's, we've actually discovered that ID Verdi haven't really been emptying the bins often enough in Dondonald Rec. The team at the council did a bit of a few spot checks, and bins were going unemptied for a couple of days. So I'm pleased to hear, Regina, that today was better. I'm hoping that might be a sign that a bit of enforcement activity from the contract team is encouraging ID Verdi to empty things a bit faster, and then especially if we get the bin lids as well, hopefully that might make a bit of a difference. So it's just a bit of a quick update on what's been going on over the last week or so.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that, Anthony. And Councillor Ed Gretton also has a question about bins. I see he's just joined the meeting. So, Councillor Ed Gretton.
Sorry for being a little bit late. Apologies, I was held up. Just a couple of questions on the subject of bins. One is on the Hayden's Road train station. One of the bins have been taken out there recently, and residents were complaining both in Trinity and Wimbledon Park ward, because it borders for two. So I just wanted to raise that. I know we put in a request for it to be returned, if bins are being taken out in important locations like that, is that a temporary thing, or any comments on that? Welcome. The other thing is on the recycling wheelie bins. I've had a lot of complaints from residents, and I did a mini audit of this around the Wimbledon Park grid. The blue lid recycling bins, if you look across the whole borough now, I don't know how many millions of pounds that the council spent on purchasing these wheelie bins, but a lot of the blue ones are just really not fit for purpose. They're cracked, they're broken, a lot of them are starting to be missing now. The grey wheelie bins have a much more solid, better fit for purpose lid on top, but the blue recycling ones, just the everyday usage and lift them up and empty them into the bin lorries and so on by Veolia, they're generally cracked now. About half of them probably are, maybe more now. And so something needs to be done, because all the cardboard waste is being put in there, and because of the cracks and the missing lids, they're all filling up the water, so probably just ending up being rejected and contaminated and going to landfill. So that's a big issue, I think, that's really growing. And at some point we're going to need some resolution, and the question will be asked, who's actually paying for the replacement of those bins as well, bin lids.
Okay, thank you for that, Ed. If it's a block of flats, it's not the council. They always make the blocks pay for their own big Euro style bins, but individuals, it'd be an interesting question to raise with officers.
These are the everyday wheelies, not the really big Euro bins, but just the standard wheelie bins with the blue lids.
Well, we didn't want to turn this into just about bins. This is an open forum, an opportunity for anybody watching either on Zoom or YouTube, or anybody who's following it on social media can ask any question that we can then send back to officials at the council or to the leadership of the council, and to get an answer. So does anybody have any questions or queries they want to raise that we could send back into the council?
Besides the ones we've raised already?
Besides the ones about bins, yes. I mean, for instance, on Twitter today, I've been monitoring lots of questions and queries about the parklets and what is a parklet, for instance. Maybe that could be a question we could get officers to answer, because there's a bit of confusion about when you can have those and what's the technical definition and how does a consultation work, and things like that. So I know Chris has been trying to answer that today, but I don't know if you've had any feedback on that, Chris.
Well, the one in Wimbledon Village that's been added in this week is being done under something called an experimental traffic order. That's unusual. I know they were done with the low traffic neighbourhoods, in the sense that you do the work first and then have a consultation afterwards. So with most schemes, you do the consultation first and then the subject goes. So this is being done the other way around. So the works have been done. There's now an online survey open. So as people get used to it, experience it, then they can feed back on what's positive or what's not. In effect, it's 2 parking spaces up on the high street of the village that are replaced with a decking area that can be used by one of the restaurants up there or additional outside seating. So it's part of the sort of recovery plan around the hospitality industry in the borough. So that's the first one, but I believe there's more money in the system and there are other sites being explored. I know they at the Rose Park Forum last week, there's quite a lot of enthusiasm for having one. Just need to tell TfL to move one of their bus stops, which is always a challenge. And I think in Morton as well, they're looking at other spaces. So there may well be a few of these popping up around the borough.
I was going to say, it's a bit of a misnomer. We've called it a parkless rather than the parklet, but
there are different models of parklets. So this is the one that's not as quite green shrubbery as some others are. So some look more like a park. This is again, it's an open space, I guess, in the sense that a park is an open space, but it's not terribly green. Plants are open. But others will have a lot more greenery incorporated.
Yeah,
so
I must say, I mean, I understand, that space is very, very valuable, but to be honest, there's hardly any parking really in the village anyway, and it's now taking out two spaces.
These are the sorts of things that people can feed back on during the process to see what impacts that had, and then make a decision. So at the moment, it's a temporary structure. So if it's decided that it doesn't work, then it can come out.
And I mean, is somebody have bought that space, or is it just for people to go and sit at, or is it the because there's the light on the common just there?
It's light on the common. We're working
so they've paid for that space.
I don't know what transactional arrangements have occurred. I have to say, I'm not in the loop on that. I understood it was coming from the COVID recovery funding from central government, but I don't know what the balance is.
No, okay.
Right, okay, well, thank you for that, Suzanne. You can feed into the response, and we've heard the question, and we can always get something offline.
Actually, can I ask another question? Not about bins or about parklets.
Okay, you can have one more.
So it's actually about whether it is about school streets. I must say, I've just seen. Well, I was just having a look, and they just look as if there's like loads of new, suggested school streets. I don't know. I mean, whether you've had any feedback on kind of like any traffic issues that have been arising from those.
So with the school streets, when most of them came in last September, when the funding came through central government via TfL, and we bid into that system, I think it was 28 in the end. They were done through the experimental traffic order system, so you do the work first and then consult rather than the other way around. So we ran a consultation for 6 months, but of course what then happened is the schools were closed for quite a large chunk of that, so they didn't go back in December until Easter. So what we have done with all of those schemes is extend the consultation period until the end of the summer term. So they're all open now until the 31st of June.
Okay, all right. Thank you for.
So people can still feed back on their experience, and we're now starting to see traffic at pre-COVID levels. So we now have a better indication of what that might be. Whereas during lockdown, it was very hard to tell what impact anything was having because the schools were closed and there was hardly.
No, okay, all right. Thank you.
Hi, can I just also say something about that? I think it's not, the signs advertising this are not really very big. So, if you don't know about this scheme at all, people can very often be taken by surprise about it because you don't know it, and the signs are too small or too confusing for people to really, be aware of it. Couldn't the signs be a bit more clearer or slightly bigger?
There are rules on road signage that are way too complicated for me to understand or follow. My highways colleagues will presumably say that these are meeting what are the required sizes for signage. I don't know. I can pass that on to them and see what options there are. But generally, we're kind of hamstrung by what part of the transport rules are on road signage. So you have to kind of meet those requirements. I can certainly ask.
Thank you. Because also, we've got 20-mile limits kind of in our local streets here, but the signs are so small that people are
again, it's a similar point to the last one where we've checked that with the police and DFT in the past. It's the bigger the speed limit, you can have bigger signs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a good point. Chris has made a note, he'll pass that on. And assuming there's no more questions on the online chat or the emails, Chris, is that right? No, okay, so we'll bring that item to an end. So the next meeting of this community forum, well, we don't know yet if it be online or in person. It depends, a mixture on council rules and government rules at the time of the meeting in September. I know it's indicated as Wimbledon Arts Space, but that is TBC. But yeah, keep an eye out for that. There'll be more interesting things in September, and hopefully people will have more questions and we can get more attendance then. So is there anything else, Chris, that we need to mention at this time?
No, nothing, Chair.
Okay, so thank you for everybody for coming tonight, and I hope you have a good rest of the evening, and I wish you a nice summer, and I'll see some of you soon. Good night.
Right.
Thanks for
Thank you.
chairing the meeting, Daniel.
Yeah.